Hi, this is Dave Specter with Fret 12, Blues and Beyond, and we're here this evening with Tony Do Rosario.
How you doing?
Just played a smoking set here at Space in Evanston with his quartet.
Thanks.
And Tony, you have a new CD out?
Yeah, it's on a Chicago label, Chicago Sessions. It's called New Beginnings, and you can get it from my website, which is www.tonyguitar.com. Also online, if you want to download it, you can download it from iTunes or any of the very popular places to download music.
Great. Talking about styles of jazz, I hear all this terminology, and I was talking with Mike about this earlier. You know, hard bop and guys who are taking it out, and guys who are straight ahead and swinging. I mean, is that just a marketing thing, or I mean, how do you?
No, I think there are generally are kind of styles of playing jazz.
Sure.
And I think it's not a bad thing to fall into a category of one of them, you know.
Right.
It's the thing is you know, once you get into one of those categories, sometimes it's very hard to kind of get out of them, right?
So where do you put yourself, or where do people classify you?
And generally linked into more of a new jazz thing. I mean, I definitely when I grew up, I studied with Pat Martino and a lot of guys around the Philly area because I grew up in New Jersey near Philly. So I was into like more straight ahead stuff, but I definitely have been more influenced to a lot of the younger new guys such as like Jonathan Kreisberg and Kurt Rosenwinkel, Lage Lund, who's another great young player, and more of in the fresh sound, new talent vein, which those guys kind of came out of. A label that's actually from Spain, but majority of the people that are on that label are people from the Village Vanguard, you know, the Village area, and play around New York and the Village.
Got it.
So, but yeah.
So I mean, you studied with Pat Martino, one of the, you know, legendary heavyweights of jazz guitar.
Yeah.
How long did you study with him?
It was off and on, you know, like, you know, it was right after. You know, Pat was just getting back into, you know, playing, so he was giving a lot of lessons. I got lucky. I had known somebody in Jersey that knew him, and, you know, off and on I would take some lessons. The thing is, with Pat, it was so heavy for me at the time, I kind of, like, would study a little bit and take it home. That's it, you know. So.
And when did you move to Chicago?
I moved to Chicago probably approximately like 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
And since I've been in Chicago, I've been teaching a lot, playing around town, playing at places like Jazz Showcase, here at Space, and a number of venues. And I primarily teach at the Old Town School of Folk Music, which is a great place if you're in Chicago and you live here and you want to learn some music. It's a great place. There's a variety of levels and a variety of styles of music. The place, actually, you can get some blues. I know, Dave, you teach there, and that's where we originally met, right? Blues, bossa nova, jazz, whatever you want to learn, you can learn it there. It's the largest community arts center in the United States, and it's a great place to, no matter what level you're at, great place to learn.
Great. So when you get a student, say, who is just starting out in jazz, say coming from rock, how do you get them started?
Basically, I like to get them to start to learn the fretboard. You know, the thing is I first off, I want them to learn the theory and the roots of, you know, music theory. But the thing is with a lot of guitar players, I noticed with a lot of guitar players that try to get into jazz and they're playing some rock or some blues, they have a lot of physical ability, you know. So it's usually never the ability. It's more just learning the instrument a little bit better. So usually I start off trying to get them to learn the fretboard, the notes on the fretboard, because you know, that is like the very first thing, because once we talk about theory and stuff, whatever they're playing, they could literally look under their fingers and see the notes that they're playing. And it's not guessing anymore. And once, you know, they start to put that together, and then I just lay down some roots of like a music theory on the fretboard. And then we start there, and then we talk about tunes and applying, you know, any of the scales or whatever, you know, the ideas we're talking about, and applying them to tunes. Because the sooner you get to applying them to a situation, you understand it a little bit better. It's not just a stagnant thing that you're practicing scales or anything, because no one wants to hear you just play scales. Or, so.
And what if a young guitar player came to you and said, Tony, I love jazz guitar, but I don't know what to listen to. Where should I start?
Well, usually I do. That's one of the very first things I do. I usually give a little list of terms and stuff on the back page of that. I actually have a list of jazz guitar records that I feel that are very important, and also non-jazz guitar, because obviously if you're talking about jazz, and especially jazz guitar, really the guitarist it came a little bit later. Jazz guitar, it was more of a background kind of instrument, and it was a supportive instrument because of electricity, right? So you didn't have electricity, and then basically once jazz guitar came about, you were trying to improvise like a horn player or a piano player or so on. But I think it's cool to check out all of that. Guitar players, horn players, piano players, everyone. Mm-hmm. I definitely think Wes Montgomery. The three main jazz guitarists I think are the most influential is Wes Montgomery, Pat Martino, and Joe Pass. Those three guys said it all. And then of the young guys, there's a lot of young guys, and obviously guys before the new young guys. Obviously I mentioned Kurt Rosenwinkel, but even guys like John Scofield and Pat Metheny, they're very influential. And I think guys that are trying to get into jazz, I think for their ears, it might be better to hear someone like that, and go backwards. That's kind of what I did. Mm-hmm. I kind of checked out what got me into jazz as I started listening to Frank Gambale. Mm-hmm. I was a real big rock kid, so I started checking out Frank Gambale, and I found that he played with Chick Corea. So I started listening to Chick Corea, and then I found that Chick played with Miles Davis. So I just went backwards. But I think a lot of young guys, that's how they find out about jazz, and even get to listen to some more straight ahead stuff.
Yeah.
So. Cool.
Can you talk about the importance of blues in jazz and the relationship between the two forms?
Well, obviously it's a big importance. One of the reasons is that form, the blues form, the basic 12-bar form. That's something, we take for granted as Americans. We hear it so much. We hear it in pop music. Hey, Prince, Kiss, that's a blues, But we hear it so much. But the thing is with that form, there's so much to learn about feeling bars. That's one of the things that a lot of musicians don't talk about, especially guitar players, is one of the things you want to develop is a rhythmic thing. And the blues form is a good way to start developing feeling 4 bars, feeling 12 bars, feeling, how, because you don't always want to feel like, oh, I have to count through everything. So once you start to hear, the blues, it's great, especially when you get into jazz blues. You hear when it goes to the 4 chord, comes back, and then you have this turnaround, which is a 2-5. One of the first things, the tunes that I teach jazz to beginners is blues and rhythm changes. Rhythm changes is a term for a form tune that's based on the Gershwin's tune, I've Got Rhythm. Now, so many tunes are based on rhythm changes and blues. If you can learn to improvise on those two forms, you can improvise on any tunes, So those are good vehicles to get started with, and especially the blues.
Could you talk about specifically what the rhythm changes are?
Yeah, rhythm changes is basically a 32-bar form, and it goes 1-6-2-5. Generically 1-6-2-5, 1-6-2-5, 2-5 to the 4 chord, and then 1-6-2-5. Then that's the A section, and then the B section is basically, I think of it as a long 3-6-2-5 using dominant chords. So if we were in a key of B flat, we would start with D for 2 bars, and then we go to G7 for 2 bars, 2 bars of C7, and then 2 bars of F7. And so that would be the B section, then you would return to the A section. Now, the thing with studying that is, if you study blues, you have stagnant chords, like dominant chords, and then you have 2-5 or 1-6-2-5s. If you study a jazz rhythm changes, you have 1-6-2-5, 3-6-2-5, then you have stagnant chords again, like stagnant dominant chords, So if you learn to improvise on those form, if you approach any standard, they're going to have those kind of progressions. And that's why those are probably the most popular and most important forms of tunes. And so many tunes are based on them, more than you even think about. Like Flintstones themes, that's rhythm changes, you know? So and the
didn't a jazz musician write that tune?
I don't know who wrote it, but it probably,
Yeah.
But yeah, so many tunes are based on those two progressions. So.
And now talking about improvisation, how do you get your students starting to improvise, and what's your approach on a more advanced level?
Well, I start off even from the very basic students. I think this is very important to convey to them. Improvising is one of the things. It's like going to a party. If I go to a party, I don't know what kind of conversation comes up. I go to there's a conversation about baseball. Now, there could be 5 people talking about that conversation about baseball. One person likes the Cubs. One person doesn't like baseball. One person likes nothing about baseball, but they have this view of baseball. The thing is there are all views on that one thing. Improvising is the same thing. As you go along in life, like if you deal with a form of a tune, say the blues, you have your views and your ways of saying things on the blues. They're personal. Like when you play on the blues, Dave, you're going to sound like Dave, right? And I'm going to sound like Tony Do Rosario. But what happens is there are terms that we've learned over our time, right? Just little segments of words or whatever, or phrases,
Right.
So the thing is there's no wrong way to improvise. Let's get that straight. But there's better ways, So you think about someone that knows the language really well and is really articulate on something, say the blues, When I like to listen to jazz blues, I like listening to like jazz guitar, I'll say jazz guitar. I like to listen to Wes Montgomery and Peter Bernstein, who's a young guy who studied with, Wes, or didn't study with Wes, I'm sorry, studied Wes a lot. But, when I listen to them, it's very precise and in the way they phrase and stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing that is the thing about improvising, it's a language, so you're building up your vocabulary all the time. The thing is studying, other people's language only helps you develop your own. So I tell students, you definitely want to emulate some people at first, because what happens is when we were little kids, obviously we learn some words. What do we first do? We imitate other people, right? And we imitate, and then eventually we can speak and hold a conversation. You're asking me questions. It's not prepared. I'm just talking, right? So it's the same thing. We couldn't do that when we were younger because we didn't know enough vocabulary to hold on a conversation. So you want to take that same concept with improvising. So the same concept meaning, like, I'm going to listen to Wes Montgomery. I'm going to transcribe some Wes Montgomery ideas.
Yeah.
I'm going to transcribe some Peter Bernstein ideas, I'm going to transcribe, so on. So the thing is it shouldn't be just guitar players. It should be everyone, like whoever sounds great to you, that's who you should, transcribe. Right. The thing is the more you do that, there's more vocabulary, The thing is a lot of people say, I don't want to get into that because I don't want to sound like that person.
Right.
Believe me, you're not going to sound like that person.
Yeah. Right.
It's only going to help you,
Sure.
Because you can express only in one way. So it's going to get into your vocabulary and then come out as you, So
exactly.